the majority of our life is lived in liminal space.
And there's this in-between space, this liminal space.
This liminality that reveals possibility.
I think we're in a liminal moment, but also in a place of transformation.
I have great affection for the church and a troubled relationship with it.
Just to be alive in time means that we're on the threshold of the future.
That can't be the gospel, because God said to love our neighbors.
We don't know what the future looks like. We have to work it out together.
Matt Alexander, welcome to the Liminal Living podcast. This is your first time with us. How are you feeling today?
Well, I'm just dandy.
You're dandy.
Happy to be here with Tom Rundel, the Bearded Wonder. And
you know, the Bearded Wonder. How do you know that's my nickname when I go and get my sandwich from Jersey Mike's?
I don't know how I could possibly know that. But
literally, they have a spot like, who's this sandwich for? And I always put Bearded Wonder. No joke.
Well, that's awesome. We are on the same wavelength. We're both Enneagram 9s. We both have beards. We're both, have thin faces.
Yes.
We both have glasses.
Glasses, I was going to say that.
So there's a lot of things that we're on the same wavelength with.
Wavelength.
Yeah.
We just said wavelength together at the same time. We are.
Right.
The 9 superpowers are linked from Texas all the way to Michigan.
All the way.
That's insane. Now, you're like brand new there to Texas, kind of. You moved from Florida, right?
Yeah, we moved from Florida about 2.5 years, a little over 2 years ago. We were in South Florida and Miami I was there for 13 years. My wife and I met, and down there she's from South Florida. She'd been in Miami for 15 years. I'm from Texas originally. So coming back to Texas is kind of coming back home for me in a lot of ways, but we're overall, happy, really excited to be here. Feel great about the move, but has been a move. It's a very weird. Yeah. There's a lot that I could probably say about that, but very, very weird moving from a place like Miami, just in terms of kind of faith and working out your faith in a place like Miami, this big, global, cosmopolitan, secular city, to Central Texas, kind of in the middle of evangelical, conservative Christianity in a lot of ways. Where
that's the belt, that's the buckle of the Bible belt, isn't it?
It's pretty central, yes. The culture around us, working out your faith, it feels really different. So we're still kind of, even though I'm from Texas, I've been in, a very big, fast-paced, secular place for a long time. And so the way you kind of work out your faith and express your faith and relate to people who don't consider themselves to be Christian or are not churched in any way, the way you kind of go about life is really different. And so we're still figuring our way through that in one way or another. But yeah,
I didn't know you were originally from Texas, but that explains why you sound so much like Matthew McConaughey. Like,
yeah,
lights went off in my head. I'm like,
right.
I just want to hear you say, all right now. It's like,
yeah. I don't have much of a Texan twang. I can pull it out if it's needed, but I think I lost that along.
Being in Miami might get that out of you.
Right.
Well, you're a part of the Kineo Institute, and you're on staff there. Kineo Center, thank you. You're on staff there. I interviewed Dan White not too long ago. Well, it may have been long ago, actually. But we talked about what he's up to there. What do you do at Kineo? Tell us a little bit about what it is and what you do there.
Yeah. So the Kineo Center got started by Dan and Tanya White. They kind of officially got started about 5 years ago now. So they moved there with their boys in 2020. And
as in Puerto Rico,
as in Puerto Rico, yeah. The Kineo Center, kind of the hub of it, is a beautiful retreat property in Puerto Rico. It's really all about coming alongside pastors and ministry leaders primarily, although we've had lots of other people in different types of vocations, particularly different helping vocations, like social workers and teachers and nurses, folks like that. But our background is in kind of pastoral ministry environment. So most of the people who connect to us are in some kind of ministry vocational environment, but it's for those folks who are navigating burnout, weariness, pain, loneliness, exhaustion, all of the above, some combination of people who have kind of given their lives to helping others grow and have gotten to a place maybe where they feel stuck themselves, or where they have experienced some pretty significant pain and are having a hard time kind of grappling through that and working towards some renewal and healing and wholeness in their own life. And so the Kineo Center really got started with this, out of this heart and desire and personal experience that we had, that Dan and Tanya as the founders had, and that I was a part of the kind of early team that started to put some things together, that we all collectively had a sense of that ministry leadership is really difficult. It's always been difficult for 2,000 plus years. That's not anything new, but some of the aspects of leading in the church in the West, in particular, right now, are unique, and the support and camaraderie and care and kind of personalized attentiveness that many ministry leaders need. We just found there wasn't a whole lot out there to really offer that kind of compassionate presence that really focused on getting at some of the core issues that pastors and ministry leaders normally experience, kind of inevitably experience if you do this type of work long enough. And so, the Kineo Center kind of got started to try to meet some of that gap. And we've had a lot of folks connect to us, which has been encouraging to see that we are meeting a need and it's resonating with people, but also, disheartening in some way that there is as much of a need as there is. So,
Well, I got to work with a group of guys that were pastors going through the program, and I saw some great things. It was a very diverse group, people who left the pastorate altogether, people who were wounded by the pastorate and trying to stay in, and then people who were still dedicated to staying but were burning out. There was just a lot of different types of burnout that they were experiencing for different reasons altogether. But I guess the content was really helpful, and the camaraderie that they experienced with knowing other pastors are going through similar things, maybe for different reasons. But what kind of patterns are you seeing in pastors today? What are the contributing factors that you've noticed that make this burnout unique to the Western church experience, as you kind of said?
Yeah. And some of the things I'm going to share probably are going on in other types of cultures as well. That's just, we're obviously, walking mainly with pastors, both men and women, by the way. Kineo's, working with all sorts of different types of denominations, some that are much more kind of on the progressive theological side of things, others that are, would be more on the conservative theological side of things. Kineo's independent, and that was important to us, that we could, one, be kind of, that we could provide a lot of confidentiality for ministers, and that we don't have there are no strings attached on our end. There's no, someone's coming to us and wondering if they should continue in this vocation or not, that we don't have a dog in that fight, so to speak, that we're not reporting back to their denominational leaders or anything, or their congregation or anything like that. We're really there to walk with that person, and we also don't really tell people what to do. We're not in it to give a lot of directive advice in terms of big life decisions, but to try to walk alongside people, help them discern, help them experience some refreshment and some care. And so anyway, that's a little bit of the ethos that we're trying to work out as well. We've had over 600 ministry leaders, not just ministry leaders, like I said, others in helping professions, but the vast majority are people in vocational ministry leadership, and who have come through for a individual retreat. So we do like individual personal retreats where people come to Puerto Rico and do intensive sessions with Dan and Tanya. It's just them and Dan and Tanya, and they're working through their story, their ministry journey. We do some things with kind of their personality. We have a few different tools around that we help people unpack that a bit, and how their unique story and the injuries that they've experienced in their ministry journey has kind of intersected with their personality, and how those things have kind of collided and created woundedness or exhaustion in their life. And so there's some kind of unpacking around that, and then also some working together towards what does it look like to kind of partner with God and with others towards a healthier way forward. And so we do personal retreats. We've done lots of group retreat experiences. We've done cohorts. That's what you were talking about before, being a part of coaching a group of pastors through a cohort. And anyway, all in total, 5 years in, we've had about 600 ministry leaders come and actually be present in one way or another on the ground in Puerto Rico. And we do some intake forms with everybody who comes to try to get a sense of what they're coming in with and what some of the common components are. And so we recently, a few months ago, kind of unpacked all those. We did like a deep dive analysis around those 600 plus intake forms of ministry leaders who have come through.
You got like data to work with.
Yeah, exactly. So, and everybody's story is unique, and there's a lot of differences and all sorts of different things. But again, across a whole bunch of different types of denominations, both men and women, people have really different theological convictions from one another on different things, different ages, different types of ministry roles, from levels of leadership within churches and denominations and ministries. We kind of narrowed it down that there are kind of four core, at least from our data set, our 600 plus, we've narrowed it down to there are like four main components to burnout that we're seeing play out over and over and over and over and over again. And usually someone comes in experiencing, at least two of these four that they're feeling acutely. They may have all four going on, or it may be, whatever. It may be one big one of these four, but I'm
interested.
I'll share. Yeah,
let's talk about these four things.
I built it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the four.
Let's do it.
Yeah, and you can. And by the way, if you want to, you can go to the Kineo's website, and we have a little. Based off this data, we created like a little 20-question little quiz kind of thing that is free.
Way.
Anybody can take. It's called the Burnout. What do we call it? The Burnout Prevention Quiz or Burnout Test.
Okay.
It's on the website. You can find it. And I think Dan and Tanya record like a little webinar video about it as well. So anyway, you guys can learn out more.
I'll put a link to that in the comments later on. Okay.
So, the four components are vocational disappointment, internalized expectations, relational injuries, and unregulated emotions.
Okay. Say those four again.
Yeah, and we can talk about each if you want.
Yeah, I want to dive into each one, but I want to hear them all again.
Okay.
So I forgot the first one.
Yeah. First one is vocational disappointment.
Vocational
disappointment. Second one is, and these are in no particular order, but these are the four. Internalized expectations. Relational injuries is the third one. And unregulated emotions. And so what we have found is that most ministry leaders who want to connect with us and do some, what we're doing is some of what we've heard over the years is like, oh, you have to be like in crisis if you want to like do something with Kineo, which that could be the case. Like someone could be in the middle of, having a really hard situation that they're trying to navigate. But a lot of people are not really in a crisis situation who could really benefit by doing something with us, whether it's a retreat or the sabbatical pathway, which we'll talk a little bit more about the sabbatical pathway in a minute. But if you're just if you've got some stuff that you've kind of swept under the rug and you've been in ministry leadership for a while and some stuff that you haven't really paid much attention to, it would probably be, really good for you to do some work with Kineo or something like Kineo to help us pay attention to what's there. Because one of the things that we've noticed and that these 4 kind of aspects of burnout speak to is that ministry leaders are really great about not paying attention to the things that have accumulated in our lives. We tend to be really good about paying attention to how other people are doing, and not so much the little jabs and cuts and bruises and ouches that just inevitably happen in any kind of helping profession. The little disappointments, the little betrayals, the little jabs, whatever. But after you've been doing this kind of work for 10, 15, 20 years, all those little jabs and cuts and bruises and betrayals and whatever have stacked up real high.
So they don't just go away.
Yeah, they don't go away. They don't go away unless you do actually some work, to process through it. And most of us don't really do that work. Even if we go through something really traumatic, really obviously difficult, many of us don't really do the work needed to process through that well. So
what would be?
So we tend to get exhausted. We tend to wake up one day and realize, oh my gosh,
yes,
I am exhausted. I don't know who I am anymore. I've lost all sense of my own convictions about things because I've just been contorting to the desires and needs of this congregation and these people. I don't know what I want anymore. I don't know what I care about anymore. And we are, we don't know what to do. And we have all these little bits of pain, some bigger than others, of course, that we've swept under the rug. We haven't paid attention to. And we're in, that's a messy place to be, but that's where a lot of people are with this.
There's like an accumulative effect on the nervous system that happens when you experience micro traumas over time that don't get dealt with, and then your nervous system starts to just freak out on you, and then that's not necessarily connected to your brain, so you're not conscious of what's going on. You're just experiencing symptoms that are disconnected from an event in your mind. And so then you're like, what the heck just happened? Why am I having panic attacks? Why am I depressed and numb? And, why am I, drawn to, alleviating like trying to regulate the nervous system through, like overeating or drinking or whatnot, and unhealthy patterns. And so I'd like to get into each one of those individually, like vocational disappointment. What would you mean by vocational disappointment? Are they like sorry they became a pastor? Are they disappointed that they currently still are one? Or they're just it's just not what they thought it was?
It can be all those things. It probably doesn't start off with being disappointed that they made that they chose the vocational route that they were on. But it might end that way, potentially. Often, a lot of the heart of it is that we oftentimes, maybe most of the time, don't see, we don't see the fruit of our labors. and the work is never done. It's not like building a piece of furniture. Not that I know anything about building furniture, but it's not like, ministry leadership is not like building a chair where you spend X amount of time building it, designing it, staining it, doing all the stuff, and then it's done. Mm-hmm. And you can look at it, you can use it, you can sell it, whatever. You've completed it. Most aspects of and it's clear how it works, or if it works or not. Most aspects of ministry, most tasks and aspects of a ministry or pastoral vocation don't have clear beginnings and ends to them. And it's very difficult to measure the effectiveness or the rate of it, or the fruitfulness of it, I should say. Even something like, preaching a sermon, which does have kind of a beginning and an end to it. It's impossible to actually measure the fruitfulness or the impact of it. So a lot of us have major impact anxiety. And there's a lot of, actually quite a lot of research around this about, not just with ministry leaders, but people in general, in this, younger generations, millennials, and maybe, younger generations than millennial. I'm kind of an old millennial. And so millennials and subsequent generations have kind of idolized, in a way, making an impact. And a lot of people get into a ministry vocation or some kind of helping profession because they want to make an impact. And then what happens pretty early on is that you realize that our plans and our dreams get thwarted by all sorts of different things. Sometimes something really negative, other times it just doesn't work out the way you thought it was going to work out, and you have to adjust or pivot or change your expectations. And again, it's a little bit the accumulative aspect of that, is that leading in ministry environments is kind of, because you're working in mystery, you're working with people and with hearts and holistic, complicated human creatures, that we're always having to flex and give and adjust our expectations, our perspectives, what the goalposts always kind of need to be shifting and moving. And that, I think, takes its toll over time. And we kind of oftentimes many of us get to a place where we're like, this is really, really different than what I thought it was going to be when I signed up for this at a seminary, or whenever you kind of started on this path. And so that's kind of where we find a lot of people who are really unsatisfied. And sometimes that is connected to one of these other aspects. It's not only the vocational disappointment has been fed into by like the internalized expectations, for example, or something else. But Well,
we live in like this society that it's kind of shifted from institutions to individuals. Like, we're not about denominations anymore, but we're about the pastors, the ones who are on the screens that we watch, the ones who we believe are successful. Right. And then, I was in that church planting movement for a while, and it was grow big, grow fast, get sustainable as quick as you can. And then you go to these seminars and conferences, and they pick like the most successful people they can find to put on the stage. And then everyone's like, well, they have arrived and I have not. I need to get where they are. One day I'll be on the stage. One day I'll have the book. One day I'll, have the recognition, the fame, the success. And we've internalized those like metrics of gauging our success. Once I do this, and it's all based around like that, the ego-driven fame that needs to tell me I did a good job and tell me I'm okay. And when you then realize that that's not necessarily what success looks like, is getting to the top of the fame mountain. I think we're starting to see like the deconstruction movement is looking at the people who did arrive and, have experienced moral failings of some aspect or another. And I don't really know what's next, but we've moved from that. Like, we're really disillusioned with those people that we believed were the ones who arrived in success in ministry, when really they just had the kind of personality and gift mix to grow large organizations.
Right.
They just happened to do it in a ministry context.
Right. Yeah.
But then we label that as God blessing the thing that they're doing.
Right.
And so if I could have those gifts, if I could do those things, then God would bless me, and then I would see similar results. It's almost like a bad theology that that just says the blessing or the metrics are proof of God's blessing, and I don't have those metrics, so what's wrong with me?
So I'm not blessed. Right.
Yeah, so it's bad theology and a bad understanding of God and what blessing and cursing is, and it's more of like, well, that's just someone is really good at building an empire, and that's what gifts they had, and they used those gifts, and they became successful with those gifts in those certain metrics.
Yes.
But then baptizing that in the language of that's God's blessing, and that's if I was good enough, I would get there too.
Right.
Insecurity complex, I think, can really like give the pastor the an uppercut to the jaw real fast.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Well, maybe that kind of like segues us into like the second component, the internalized expectations, right? You're kind of getting into
because we would internalize that. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Every time I went to a conference, or saw whatever, the people who are kind of platformed or highlighted at those types of things, at least historically. I know there are some pretty cool gatherings that have started like in the last 10 years or so that are not doing that thing quite in the same way, which is awesome and refreshing. But we tend to have what is celebrated or what is platformed, like we tend to want to have that thing. I want to be celebrated. I want to be platformed. Yes. So what do
exactly.
It's a comparative, the expectations. So the second thing that has been a big a big aspect of burnout that pastors come to us. They may not have, when a ministry leader, we start working with them in whatever the format is, most of the time they don't have this language. This is we're kind of trying to, some of what we have found over the years, that part of the renewal journey for most ministry leaders is, and something that Kineo tries to be helpful in, is helping to offer some language to the experience that folks have had.
So it's very ambiguous. It's emotional, and it's not necessary. It's even subconscious sometimes.
Yes.
And you're like labeling it.
And sometimes, being able to name something is really powerful, right? And however the naming takes place, like we give our children names. We give our pets names. We give, and being able to give a name to our pain experience that is oftentimes really confusing, and that we have a hard time kind of unraveling it or pulling it apart a little bit and seeing it, can be really, really helpful for people. So that's some of what we try to help people do. And anyway, so internalized expectations. So and I kind of got at this earlier, of that oftentimes ministry leaders lose sight over time with their sense of self, because there are expectations that come from, that are external to us, from others in our congregation, or our bishops, or or our mentors, or our families of origins. All of us, come into our ministry roles having been formed around a certain type of expectations that our caregivers had upon us, or that our teacher, important mentors or whoever, were very formative in our shaping. And we all have we have external expectations from those around us, and we have internal expectations of this is what a pastor does, or the type of leader, this is what I need to be. And we end up contorting ourselves to try to meet these expectations, whether they be from the outside or from the inside. And the problem itself is not that there are expectations. That's part of just being a human being. The problem is that we are really unaware of most of these expectations and the effect that they're having on us. And so our lack of awareness of them means that we are not we're being reactive, basically. We're being reactive to whichever expectations are screaming the loudest at us in the moment. And so we kind of become enslaved to that a bit and reactive. And over time lose a sense of who we are, lose our sense of our agency. Some of the work that we help ministry leaders do is paying attention, trying to, again, name the voices within, so to speak. One author that's been a writer on this that's been influential to me is a guy named James Bryan Smith, who has done a lot of work kind of continuing some of the work that Dallas Willard did around narratives and scripts. And
yes.
So James Bryan Smith has this really great little quote. He says, all of us have scripts, is the language that he uses. All of us have scripts that are running and often ruining our lives. And that a big part of our renewal journey and of growing more and more into the image of Christ is trying to unpack these scripts and kind of get them out on the table and to explore them of where did this come from? Is this true? Is this beautiful? Does this serve me well? And if the conclusion that we come to is no, actually this isn't true or beautiful, or maybe it doesn't work for me in a generative way anymore, that we can grab onto a different kind of script. We can reframe it. And so, that's a component too, is helping pastors unravel again what the expectations, the dominating expectations that they've really internalized over years.
Yeah, and those scripts really do play a huge role in our mental health, because it's almost like those name tags. Hello, my name is. It's like they're the tags that we're placing. Well, I always do that. I always screw that up, or I always mess this up, or I can never figure this out, or I'm never going to be okay, or never going to figure. All those things that the self-talk that we do kind of does reveal the narratives we believe about ourselves.
Right.
And I noticed that I try to pay attention to my self-talk and the narrative I have in my head, because it really is important. That's really what I believe about myself. If I can grab it in a moment, something goes wrong, and my immediate reaction, whether in my head or vocalized, it'd be like, yeah, but I always screw that up anyways. Kind of that is a narrative that I embraced about myself that says I'm really not that talented of an individual. Of course I'm going to screw up. Of course, that's a narrative I believe about myself, that I'm not that great of an individual. I'm just pretending my way through life, or there's these narratives that are very powerful that really do, they become almost like self-fulfilling prophecies if they get powerful enough. And so being able to look at them and say, where did I learn that? Why do I believe that? What is that actually real and true? And then trying to reverse it in the moment. You catch it when you're thinking of it or saying it out loud. You just stop. You reverse the script. You say, even good people mess up.
Right.
Something stupid like that. Something simple.
Sure. Yeah. That's
so
good.
what other kind of narratives do you see, like in all these different pastors and leaders that you're talking to? What kind of narratives are they holding on to that seem to be really like unhealthy?
Oh,
you notice patterns in there?
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of things, and some of them are, we work with a lot of female leaders, female pastors, and those are there are some differences when it comes to whether you're a man or a woman. Women definitely have a different types of expectations in their congregations and their ministry environments that they are having to navigate and process through and resist than most men do. And so just to say that, I think that's important. People of color as well. Than guys that look like you or me. It was not to say it's easier or worse or better or whatever. It's just different. And so a lot of it, I mean, we could get into the Enneagram. A lot of it, the Enneagram is a really helpful tool when it comes to these types of things.
Personality assessments and stuff.
That's one of the tools that we use. For us, the Enneagram is not, I know people have different perspectives on the Enneagram. We found it to be a helpful tool, not that it's the end all be all or that it's our primary identity or anything like that. But it does help us to kind of pay attention to our patterns and the ways that we oftentimes tend to show up in the world. And so it helps to bring some of that awareness, some of that language that can be beneficial to paying attention to our story. So that can be a great place to start, to think about internalized expectations. I've personally really benefited by doing like a lot of during different seasons of life, a lot of, family of origin work to try to unpack some of the core scripts and messages that I kind of received and internalized, as a child, as a young boy. And so I think that can be really helpful too. A lot of pastors are really struggling around, messages of inadequacy and scripts of inadequacy or a failure for sure, or scripts of, even ministers who maybe, 10 years ago wouldn't have felt inadequate in their role, but now with all the complexity, with the political climate that we're in and COVID a few years ago, the pressures that pastors and ministry leaders were dealing with and continue to deal with now, to be seen as some kind of like expert, to be able to speak into all these different, very complex issues in an intelligent way. That's a different type of pressure than most ministry leaders have had, pressed upon them historically.
Don't really have a seminary class about how to talk about all the hot points in the news in your Sunday liturgy. That's not something they teach you, but there's that. And everybody, there's a common.
I was just going to say, everybody in your congregation is going to have a different expectation about if you should or you shouldn't, or if you do, this is how you can do it, and this is how you shouldn't do it. And it's just a terrible, spot to
hard.
be. Yeah.
I remember the Sunday after this past election, I just got up and like, this is a hard day because our politics are trash. Because some of you were dancing in the streets and some of you couldn't get out of bed, and somehow we're all have to gather in the same room and figure something out. I was like, it is really hard to be a pastor these days because of the climate that we're in. Yeah, it is. Because there's one end where people will say, like, if your pastor doesn't talk about fill in the blank, you need to leave that church immediately.
Sure.
Find one that does. And it's on either side of the aisle, with the shooting at Charlie Kirk, where you'd have the conservatives saying, if your pastor isn't talking about Charlie, then you need to leave. And then you have people on the other side, if your pastor isn't talking about Gaza, then you need to leave. It's like,
Sure.
I don't know how to be, an expert economist and a global political relations expert and I can't do all those things. I got my own opinions on stuff, but I don't want to make it into gospel truth at the same time.
Yeah.
There are things that ethically we need to talk about, but good Lord, it's really hard.
It's a really difficult time. And again, I don't want to, all you have to do is study a little bit of church history to realize like it's never been an easy time to try to be a faithful pastor, shepherd in any kind of Christian. There's never been an easy time, no matter where. There's always been challenges. If you're trying to do it, if you are seeking to be faithful and humble and to take on the cruciform way of love and leadership. And so I'm not trying to say it's like, oh my gosh, it's like the worst time the church has ever faced to like be a pastor or whatever. I don't think I can say that, but it is a really difficult time, and it is unique.
We
in many
seem
ways.
to be in a very liminal spot as
liminal. There
humanity.
You go.
Like it's
right.
There's some shifting happening that the church is not keeping pace with, and I think we're still stuck in like we haven't made peace with Copernicus yet. Like we're not the center of the universe. All of our theology is very earth-based, human-based. And science has kind of blown the doors on that, and just in the last century, and said, "No, wow, there's actually more galaxies out there, and then there's more galaxies than stars, and like we're just in a totally different world." And one of the difficulties that I've had as a pastor, I've finally worked my way through this stuff, but one of the difficulties I had was almost like maintaining a small worldview that is supposed to be all-encompassing, like a whole metaphysic of how the whole universe works. And if you're to peel back the layers of visible reality, then here's exactly what it's going to look like. You'll see angels and demons and they're battling, and then Jesus is here in golden streets. And like we've taken all this stuff to a literal place that it's almost built a worldview that's too small for what reality now knows. But we have to keep maintaining that as if that is the whole truth. That is the gospel. Yeah. And then pastors have to try and how do I maintain that little bubble for my congregation and let them know, yeah, I know science says this. Yeah, I know the world is saying this, but we know the truth. Almost conspiracy theory like. And then you're really weird. You don't really have friends because that's really alienating. It's like, oh, you're the pastor. Like, I bet you don't drink. I bet you don't smoke. I bet you don't cuss. I bet you don't, and all these things then. And sure. Pastors then become really lonely.
Yes.
And isolated in a small world that they're supposed to maintain and keep the illusion going for their congregations. And then that was a big part of, my burnout. Decade or so ago. I just said, man, my theology does not match my lived experience, and I can't pretend it does anymore.
Sure.
So that's
So this is a maybe this kind of fits into like the vocational, some of what you were talking about, the vocational disappointment, the internalized expectations of like you've changed your imagination, some of your convictions has evolved beyond, and you don't know how to be who your evolving self in this context anymore, and that's scary. And and the longer, I imagine, the longer you tried to like twist, contort yourself, twist yourself, the more discouraged you felt, with
and isolated,
isolated, lonely. Right? You couldn't be honest about kind of where you were at.
I'm a bigger fella. I'm 6'5", and I think back in my burnout, I dropped down to 150 pounds. I was just look at pictures of me and I'm like, man, I'm just like the wind's going to knock me over kind of a thing. And I mean, a whole lot of things went into that. And I went off into a liminal experience of just kind of transitioning between church and helping them out here and there and here and there. And 7 years ago, I landed in the spot I'm in now. And the thing that's helped me about most is it's not creedal, it's covenantal. We're bound in covenant together, and we have a loose 7-statement doctrinal, statement that you get to interpret according to your own conscience, and so does everyone else in the room. So we're not bound to this creed, and the relationships can be sacrificed, but we're bound to each other, and our creed has to conform to the relationship. That has helped me stay sane and stay a pastor. And so I've been here 7 years now. And
because I imagine some of the expectation is in that environment that we're all going to evolve.
Yeah.
But we're going to, the expectation is not that we stay as individuals, we don't stay static, that we continue to evolve, to question, to doubt, to embrace mystery, to struggle, but we remain together as we kind of do that, and we even help each other. In the best case scenario, we help each other explore those things, right? Yeah, that's some of what it works for you. Yeah, that's cool.
That has worked, and so what you're talking about is really it does kind of encapsulate my own burnout as a pastor. So I've worked my way through that. I never had that vocabulary for it. And it took me a long time to work through it, and I could never land in a church because I was like, well, I can't sign the paper that says I believe this because I really don't. Right. And I just, Sure. So I think I spent a good 7 years just kind of floating. Yeah. In, interim roles here and there, support roles here and there, and then found a place. I'm like, I could actually do that. I could be there and not have to compromise who I am. And that's given me longevity. And I know not a lot of pastors have that. And that's difficult because they're very creedal and they hold to the creeds, and you protect the creeds. And if someone's outside the creed, you excommunicate them. And
Right. It's pretty hard lines. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, a third component, we're on number three, is relational injuries. So maybe that speaks into some of what you were just saying, kind of having these hard lines around who's in, who's out, kind of sometimes has something to do with that. For pastors, what we've noticed is that the vast majority of pastors who connect with us, part of their pain is that there's been some kind of relational injury in their ministry context. Mm-hmm. It could be, it could really happen in all sorts of different ways, but it's specific to their ministry context. Now, obviously, this compounds if there is abuse or relational trauma from outside their ministry context, either that they went through as a child or a spouse or with some other types of relationships. But we're talking specifically about within your church, within your pair ministry that you're leading, whatever it is. It could be someone who's kind of in an authority role over you. So you're a supervisor or your mentor or you're a board member. Or it could be someone who's like kind of a peer or someone on your team. Or it could be someone within the congregation. And I don't mean to like create this hierarchy exactly because I think it can be a lot more fluid than that. But just to give a sense of like, it's not always like your supervisor like treated you poorly so you have relational injury. It can go both ways. In fact, one of the things that we try to say, not to beat this drum too hard, but most of the stories that we hear out here on social media or in the news or whatever is of the abusive pastor, or the pastor who's like has scandal around them, the pastor who is mistreated their people in their congregation, or there's been abuse or something, or mistreatment of funds or some type of scandal. And those things absolutely happen, 100%. Yeah. The stories we don't hear, though, that are not talked about on social media is congregations abusing their pastors, of congregations beating up their pastors in one way or another. And those are not sensational stories, but those are the stories we hear.
They're also very common. Yeah.
Very common. Very, very normal. And
get the angry congregant that you didn't play the song that they liked, or you get the boss that doesn't think that you met that standard of you were supposed to bring in X amount of new members by this time.
Yeah. Right.
I actually received a death threat as a pastor in my pastoral role a couple of years ago, where the church kind of imploded upon itself and a lot of angry people. He was a retired police officer. He was very mad. And he told me to sleep with my eyes open because he knows how to hide bodies where they can't be found. And he walked out. And I was like, let me go deliver communion now. It's like, that was very abusive situation that traumatized me.
Yes.
And we don't really hear about those. We do hear about, and we should talk about pastoral abuses. I think that those are
absolutely.
But pastors also experience those relational traumas from the congregation or staff members or denominational overheads, overseers, and stuff like that. That's also common.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. So this is another thing, is that pastors are carrying these relational injuries. This is super, super common, super normal. And there are oftentimes, because this is one of the other aspects of there's so many dual relationships that happen in ministry environments. And what I mean by that is that in most of our relationships, most relationships are pretty simple. We're friends. Like, I'm friends with this person, they're friends with me, and that's it. That's kind of the nature of the relationship. We don't work together. I'm not their supervisor. I'm not, married to their sister. I'm not most of our relationships are very simple. Or I work with this person, we work together, and we don't really hang out outside of work or whatever. But when you are working in a ministry leadership environment, let's say a church, your relationships get real sticky real fast, because there are very, very, very few relationships that are just what's the word I'm looking for? That are simple relationships. You are a staff member, but your supervisor is also kind of your spiritual leader. Maybe you have a friend, but they're also one of your volunteers, and so you're kind of you're kind of overseeing them. Yeah. And it can get even more, we could think of much more complicated situations. And so ministry environments it's very easy for relational injuries to occur because of these added layers of complexity of relationships.
Well, that's interesting. Yes. And I've noticed that because the pastor joins a church and they're like, we're a family. And then you are in the family.
Right.
But when you get a new job, you have to leave the family and go start a new family. And but you don't really take that in. This is your world, your friendships, and that's your whole world. Your kids' friends are there, your spouse's friends are there. Maybe they go to school there because and it's your worshiping community. It's all these things. And pastors usually don't stick with a church more than 5 or 7 years. Yeah. And then they move on.
Yeah.
And then your whole world has to change. And, the people that you were there for their high points of, baptisms and marriages and new memberships, and your low points of, helping them grieve through the loss of a loved one, walking them through addiction into counseling to get help. And, you were there for all the big things, and you're like, wow, enmeshed in their life. We're like best friends or something. And then, then you move to a new church and they don't call you and they don't text you. And there's this wow. And I've looked back on all the churches that I have been involved in, and there's maybe one person from each community that I still have a semi connection to.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's
and
fascinating, isn't it?
We don't understand, like, we serve a role in this, in this context of being a pastor. It's when we move that reality into the unconscious and we just say, no, I'm the best friends of all my congregants, and there's no, transactional relationship here. It's just, I'm just being here and with them and they're my family. And then you move and you realize, well, that really wasn't true.
Right.
And you do that a couple of times and you sustain like the shifting of your entire social world a couple of times. And you're like,
yes,
that can lead to some really, just some weird thoughts about, is it real? Did I have a relationship? Right. And not really understanding the role you play as a pastor in the lives of other people is not the same as being tight friends with somebody and all that stuff.
Yes, it's really different. I had a mentor tell me years ago that, and he's 20, I mean, he's probably 30 years older than me. No, it's something like that. So he kind of grew up in a ministry leadership environment at a time where some of the prevailing message was, you don't become friends with people in your congregation. Where like that was pretty standard advice. Mm-hmm. Part of that had to do with the fact that, like, he was in a denominational system where he was going to move around a bit, so that was part of it. But also part of it was, I think there was like this layer of like, we're trying to protect you and the congregation from getting hurt and so he said, he told me, is like, one of the best gifts that a pastor can give their congregation is for the pastor to have really good friendships with people who are outside their congregation. And I think that there's some wisdom to that, of you're not looking to get as much of kind of your friendship needs met if you're able to do that. I also am from a time where I'm like, but you need to have friendships within this community that you're doing. Like, this is normal human nature. But, I think these relational injuries are kind of inevitable in a lot of ways. I don't think there's a way to like completely avoid it. I think some of them are absolutely should be avoided, and there are different things that we can do to improve. Yeah. Policies and the way that people, particularly people on staff, interact with each other to avoid, abusive behavior and practices that are harmful and all those types of things. But I also think it's messy and it's complicated, and that there is going to be relational pain in any kind of human system, and certainly within a system that's trying to cultivate, vulnerability amongst people. That's just going to be messy at times. Yeah. So,
and the people I pastor now, like, I love them tremendously. Like, I want the best for them, and I really do. I feel like I have great friendships within the church community that I'm in. Like, I really like these people. I like what we're doing in the community. But I'm also aware, like, pastors don't stay where they're at for the entirety of their whole career. So having that expectation built in and just saying, relational injuries will come my way. How am I going to, navigate them? If, I'm called to a different vocation or position or whatever, how will I navigate that? Instead of immersing my whole world here and then being surprised if, a change happens in the future. And it's like, because I was that way. I had that with a couple of churches. I immersed myself. It was my world. They were my friends. It was a thing. Yeah. And then I moved, and I'm like, wow, I don't have friends. Like, I lost my friends because I moved away from them. And there's really no way around that. You can tremendously love the people you're with and know that it could be seasonal. Know that it could be like having that expectation built into your mind and saying, well, I don't know when that happens or if it does, but it could, and I have to understand that they're going to
Sure.
need a new pastor to come, and that'll be they'll have to move on. I'll have to move on, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I got no plans to do that, but it's
Sure.
in my brain is like, these things happen. I have
Sure.
to be aware of that in order to love them effectively now. I have to be aware that changes do happen regularly, normally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we got to talk about the fourth one.
All right. I know. We got
to hit that one.
Yeah.
We can do it.
The fourth one is unregulated emotions. Unregulated emotions.
What we got there?
A lot of kind of what we're getting at with that is that this has to do with some of what we talked about before, but the accumulation of little things over time that little disappointments, little pains, little relational injuries, little things that we don't address or we sweep under the rug or we kind of allow to fester over time, over years, is that we also tend to do is to sweep our emotions about these things under the rug, to not just not pay attention to what happened to us, but to not pay attention to how we feel about what happened to us. And so we have unregulated emotions in terms of, why am I so angry all the time? I didn't used to be so angry. Or why am I all of a sudden just really sad? And these are not bad. It's not bad to feel anger. Mm-hmm. It's not bad. It's not bad or bad to feel sad or depressed even, it's probably not where we want to be though. For long periods of time, it's probably not what we want to be kind of dominating or controlling our experience. And so these feelings kind of arise in response to situations that seem, insurmountable, or that feel like we're under strain, we're kind of overwhelmed. And oftentimes it's not just like a one thing. It's like kind of been, accumulating, been building for a while. And we haven't had kind of micro ways of paying attention to our emotional life during these, smaller cuts or bumps or bruises, not to minimize them, but, smaller things, so that eventually, if something bigger, when something more significant does happen, it's really overwhelming. We're way, unregulated. Our response is way beyond what makes sense for what's going on.
Yeah.
And so, this is some of the wisdom in a way of like somebody like Saint Ignatius, with the prayer of examen, which is like a form of prayer of helping us pay attention to our consolations and desolations, the highs and lows of our daily experience, the moments of great connection and joy and energy and love, and the moments of fear, anxiety, disconnection, pain. And little habits like that help us to stay. It doesn't have to just be the prayer of examen. That's just an example of a way to practice kind of paying attention to our emotional life, what's going on beneath the surface, as a way of staying regulated emotionally. And, he saw it as a way of discerning the spirit as well, so.
Yeah. Each week, like churches normally, some of those traditional churches, does anyone have a prayer request? And they raise their hand and, oh yeah, pray for Aunt Millie. She's got, I found that practice there usually focused in on the negative experiences that we're experiencing. But also it was really isolating to new people and children. So we involved a new practice at our church where we have pieces of paper in the pews and you can write down your prayer request and we collect them, we light a candle over them. So introverts can participate, kids can participate, brand new people who don't want to give their life story can participate.
Right.
And I always say you can put something you want to express to God on that piece of paper, whether it's something bringing you anxiety and concern or something that has brought you a sense of gratitude or joy. You put it on that piece of paper and we'll light a candle over it. And then we say the all shall be well prayer afterwards. I do give people an opportunity if they do want to vocalize something they've written down, but we've refocused it from the vocalizing to the writing and then the candle lighting of over those pieces of paper. If I've done a funeral that week, I'll put their little program on there too and say we'll be in prayer for the family. But I noticed that like we have to involve, like this is also like things that bring us joy and gratitude need to be recognized as well as the things that bring us concern and anxiety. And every now and then I'll say, if there's something just really making you mad, you're mad at God, you can put that on there, like pay attention to the emotions that are bubbling up within you because they're just signs pointing to something else that we're supposed to pay attention to. And I think pastors they're not supposed to have those emotions and whatnot. You're supposed to keep us centered and God is good all the time. There's that expectation that's in the DNA of a lot of Western churches that I think we need to just kind of like, let's start phasing that DNA out, and say we can name the things. I mean, it's really hard to find a song to sing on a Sunday morning that makes space for lament. It's like there's not a lot of lamenting songs that make it on the top 100 CCLIs. It's like
right.
It's overly positive all the time.
Yes.
So we're just really not allowed to look at the reality of our experience, our human experience. We're supposed to have a faith experience, and I think we spiritualize a lot of things that should remain human. Like if we really believe in the incarnation, that God became human, then our faith should be grounded in the human experience of our nervous system and our brain chemicals and our relational history and our traumas and our personality. Like if we can't have a very human faith, then we have this otherworldly spiritual thing that might be easy to wear as a cloak, but it doesn't really keep the wind out when, or if the heat turns up, Lord have mercy, you're going to start sweating. Like, I think pastors need to be free to be themselves. To be able to express, like, I'm tired today. Wish I was in bed this morning. It's a really tough season, or being able to be honest with who they are and their human experience, and then give other people that same permission. We all experience their emotions, and that's a part of our faith. Well, I really appreciate how you can label these 4 things out of data of 600 ministry leaders that have come through your organization. That is really cool. I want to put the quiz in the link in the comments. What other links you want to share with people that they can kind of connect with you and what you're doing in Kineo and all that stuff?
Kineo, let me just pull up the website because I always get websites wrong. The Kineo Center. Okay, the KineoCenter.com is our website, and if you go on there to the homepage, we have a bunch of different offerings. We have, we do group retreats, we do personal retreats where you can come, an individual can come and do work on site, or if their spouse as well, if it's a ministry couple. We do something called the Sabbatical Pathway that I oversee for ministry leaders who are doing a sabbatical. And we have a few different components with that. That includes coaching and the retreat, the personalized retreat. It's a wonderful journey. We just had a bunch of people over the last few years ask us for help with sabbaticals. And so we crafted something to help them hopefully lean into that with greater focus and intentionality and support, and still lots of flexibility to lean into some things that are going to be really life-giving to them, that is unique to them and their journey and season of life and ministry. So we got a bunch of things going on. Would love for folks to connect in any way that resonates with them in the season.
Oh, man. All right. That's really cool. You got a sabbatical pathway, because there's so many pastors I've heard say, I need to take a sabbatical. I just don't know what to do with it.
Exactly.
Is it just an extended vacation? It's like, what am I supposed to do with that? And I love that you guys have a little pathway for that. And if you're all burned out and wounded and weary pastors, you have groups for that. And Oh, I hear some
Yep.
kiddos.
Totally.
Are you kidding?
One of them. Yeah, he was watching something, but he has found me.
There he is.
There he is.
He's making an appearance on the Liminal Living podcast.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome.
Anyway, that's where you can find out more about Kineo and connect in some way.
Dad.
Hi, bud.
Dad.
That's Tom. You'll say hello, Tom.
Tim.
Hi. Well, thanks for coming on and talking with me. I think it's been awesome. I'll put those links down in the comments.
So much fun.
And we will, I'll send some people your way.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. Great to see you.
Yeah.